Hi everyone, so I'm a recent NYU graduate, and because of that, I've been getting some requests from like family, friends, and stuff like that to give their kids advice on attending NYU or if I would recommend that they attend it and things like that. So one thing I've been doing is watching a lot of the YouTube videos to see what kind of cons they provide about the school. And so I just want to give kind of my take on what I think the context is of a lot of those pros and cons and where a lot of people's frustration with the school comes from and things like that, because I think that it's important to have like a nuanced outlook on it. So I think that a lot of things people say that are bad about the school aren't necessarily bad, it's more of what you make out of them. And the good parts, I can elaborate on those too. And I think one thing to keep in mind is that the experience or your experience will really be what you make out of it. Let me just get started. So I think a lot of the criticism of NYU stems from people's expectations not meeting the realities. So for starters, I mean, this is kind of obvious, but it is a real college. I know that NYU is portrayed on Gossip Girl and a bunch of other schools as this like chill place where people sit around in coffee shops all day and like ponder about the meaning of life or are just doing things like that. You do have to study. There are a lot of real courses. There's a core curriculum, which I believe is 8 courses in a wide variety of different fields like science, humanities, philosophy, stuff like that. So you will encounter in all these classes perhaps one class that you don't love, so just keep in mind that it is a real school. The classes are quite work heavy, so in some classes you'll have 2 midterms or I think I've had 3 midterms before, just like a lot of weekly things you have to hand in, so just remember that. I mean, it is a real college. I think that's kind of self-explanatory, just I think a lot of people forget that and they focus on, oh, I'm gonna live in New York, I'm gonna do all these touristy things, but you will have to study if you attend NYU. And that's kind of an expectation of the school. Another thing is that, for instance, I think this can pertain to certain majors. There are, for instance, the Gallatin School of Individualized Studies, where you can create your own major, but they also have requirements. Like you have to take a prerequisite on, I believe, like ancient history or something like that, and a bunch of other prerequisites. But I don't personally attend that school, so I'm not entirely sure. In addition, there's the School of Dramatic Arts, so Tisch, and they also have prerequisites. So you also will have to take a writing class. You can't just do your musical theater. There are other requirements, which I think is good. You're getting a well-rounded education. Just I know with a lot of like filmmaking videos I've watched, that's been a kind of concern. If you want a more like hands-on career path, unfortunately, you will have to take these more academic classes. I also realized I forgot to introduce myself. So I graduated with a degree in economics and political science in the College of Arts and Science, which I believe is the most populous college at NYU. And also economics and political science are quite like majors with a lot of people. And I do realize that some of you may not be applying for those, so I'm going to try to keep this as broad as possible. Pertaining to some of my friends I know in these other majors, and I have also taken courses in other departments. However, just keep that in mind that I am speaking primarily from the College of Arts and Science perspective. So first of all, I'm going to talk very quickly about the pros and then kind of elaborate as I go on. I'm sorry that this isn't very structured. So the first pro is the academic and professional outcome. So I know we're heading toward a global recession, so this may be a bit difficult, but I think that these are the reason why you should attend college in the first place. 40 years later, you may remember your friends and stuff like that, but I think you should make your decision based on, what career path you can do. And personally, I think these are very good across the board. Again, it's a bit difficult right now, but from what I know, a lot of my friends who wanted to go to grad school have gotten into the law schools they wanted, or, Masters of Public Policy, and also career-wise, I've known people who have interned at CNN, Sony Music, what else? For public health, people have also gotten into Masters of Public Health programs, so I think that they'll for sure be fine. I struggled with this while I was at NYU. I was like, are my academic and professional outcomes going to work out and things like that, but don't worry. I think for the most part, they do. Now, of course, these may not always be exactly what you wanted, and I believe these also depend a bit on the school, and I'm not going to lie, there are also other factors like how much support you get from your family and stuff like that, but just keep in mind that for the most part, if you're willing to put in the work, you should be fine. Now, of course, it's a bit difficult now, but again, that's one reason why you should attend the school. The second thing is the international environment. So not only does NYU have a lot of international students, they also have kind of unparalleled, I sound like the brochure on the website, study abroad opportunities. I think this is a good thing. Some people, may have their own thoughts on this. I think that international students provide, a great addition to the university because they provide a lot of different perspectives and you can learn so much about different cultures. I can't even tell you how much I've learned about the history of certain places, but I'm also a very curious person, so I feel like I'm not really sure if that applies to you. You can also probably go through your experience at NYU and not really learn too much about other countries, just that's up to you. And for the most part, I've seen some videos where they've said that it's kind of a closed off community and people may have their opinions on that. However, I do think that for the most part, you will always find people who are willing to engage. So don't kind of believe everything you hear. I think there are definitely people who are willing to engage and willing to share their culture with you, and you can learn a lot. I think it's a great opportunity. And I mean, this is kind of obvious. New York City, you can do stuff in New York City, just watch, New York City videos. And now I'm going to get to some of the cons. So the first con, I think, is that NYU is pretty competitive. So a lot of, like I mentioned before, TV shows show NYU is this like chill, easy hipster place. That's not necessarily true. I think if you are someone who will struggle in a competitive environment, definitely take that into account when attending NYU and maybe be conscious of that. So the first thing is that, for instance, if you tend to compare yourself a lot to people, there are a lot of people in designer clothes. You will see, $2,000 bags on the way to class and, just like Canada Goose jackets, all that. So this actually happened to me. This girl sitting, like I was sitting here and then there was a chair and then there was someone sitting there and I almost spilled my coffee on her bag and it ended up being Prada. Like thankfully it didn't actually spill, but like a suede Prada bag. So it can be kind of anxiety inducing when things like that happen. But, first of all, it's not everyone. And second of all, I think people are very fashion conscious. So just keep that in mind. They want to express themselves. It's not necessarily to show, like, be mean to you or whatever. But if you're someone who doesn't think that's a good idea, I think you will for sure find people at NYU who agree with that statement and who are not about that. But just keep in mind, like, if you just get anger from seeing that, maybe don't attend the school. And I think this is also common at other schools, so definitely just keep that in mind if you're willing to go to school in like a big city. Another thing is that people tend to talk about their internships and like name drop, I don't know, people. This can be even like in class, so at times it can be kind of annoying because you're like, why are you just answer the question? Like you don't have to say where you interned, you don't have to say like what your dad does, but people do this. Okay, so I think that, yes, this can be annoying. If you're someone who will get just anxious if you hear that this person got an internship and you didn't, try to deal with that or, like I said, maybe choose a less competitive environment, but that can be kind of, there are definitely people like that. Like I said, it's not everyone. I don't even think it's the majority of people, to be honest. I think the majority of people are just kind of trying to do their own thing, but there are definitely people who will raise their hand and go on and on about having, like, interned at the UN or whatever, and, like, you're like, oh. So, just keep that in mind. There are definitely people like that. But, it's a big school. So there'll be people of every sort of kind of just different personality traits. And always remember, if people are bragging all the time, it could be because they're insecure or they're going through their own things. So just keep that in mind. Don't necessarily hate the people who are doing that either. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is that I've heard a lot of videos talking about flaky people. Just another thing I wanted to mention, people also wear suits to class. I mean, I don't know if this is common in like other disciplines, but in econ, people come to class in suits. Sometimes you're like, what are you wearing to class? It's because they have internships and stuff like that, so don't let that stress you out. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is flaky people. So this has been mentioned in a lot of the videos where people have said that NYU people don't tend to have that much time, or they tend to be not take their relationships very seriously. Again, personally, I think this is context driven. I think that, people aren't necessarily trying to blow you off. I think just NYU students tend to be very busy with internships or clubs or coursework, just, care about their classes or have like a lot of different friends from all the various things they do. And so therefore, there are also commuter students, just keep that in mind. And so therefore, because of all these reasons, they may not always have time to, meet you today at 4 p.m. You may have to schedule it in advance, and sometimes you'll have to rearrange your schedules and things like that, which can be kind of annoying because I think that if you were at, a smaller college, you could just, see them and be like, let's hang out. but it can be sometimes a bit difficult to spend time with people, especially if you don't live together or don't necessarily have the same classes. I think that is just the fact that people are quite busy, and I think, you know, they're trying to take advantage of their internship opportunities and things like that. So don't take it too personally if people don't have as much time to see you as you would like. I think this gets worse kind of junior year. I'd say freshman, sophomore year, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, I think people do tend to, some people do need scheduling. This isn't everyone, like I said. I've known plenty of people who are available quite often, but, you know, this can be something about people. Next is just the bureaucracy of NYU that can be kind of annoying. It's a large school, so understandably they take a while to file documents, or sometimes they make mistakes and you have to go to them and ask and things like that. So yeah. The next thing I want to talk about is internships. So I think, like I said, a lot of people did get good internships and stuff like that, but it is a competitive process, and I think for some people it can be quite stressful. So the area that I think this is most stressful in, again, like, I'm not an expert, I think just the types of people who talk about this most tend to be in the School of Business or the Stern School of Business, or also in, you know, economics and things like that. And I think the reason is that those jobs in finance, those highly coveted jobs, just tend to be very difficult to get as a whole. It's not necessarily because you went to NYU. I think everyone from, you know, top schools or just any schools has trouble getting those jobs. And, you know, NYU tries their best to help you. They try. They have on-campus recruiting, for example, where they'll invite companies to come and pick students to interview on campus. However, this is limited. The companies can, you know, reserve a certain number of spots, and you may not make the cut. The Career Center can also help you with improving your resume and stuff, but they can't tell you, okay, do X, Y, Z, and you'll get a job there. You know, it just doesn't work like that. So I think that is an area where people can become very discouraged or frustrated. But as I said, in the academic and professional outcomes, I think for the most part, you know, you may have trouble sophomore year, or, you know, freshman year, but don't take it too personally. I think in the end it'll work out, you know. Just, I think that can be something that people can get kind of frustrated with, where they say that the university doesn't do enough for career help, which I think it is a very large university, so keep that in mind. And like I said, a lot of times people get frustrated about jobs that are just very difficult to get in the first place. So yeah, if a place has like a 1% acceptance rate out of everyone, it is hard. It's not necessarily because you go to NYU, it's just hard across the board. Okay, so I feel like I'm really defending NYU in this. Wow. Who would have thought? Okay, so another thing is that there is definitely, again, like a fantasy versus reality about NYU, New York City in general. So if you go to NYU, or study in New York City, you will have to study. As I said in my first point, which I think is the most important that people somehow forget, it is a college. There is quite a lot of academic work. And like I said, this is true, I think, across the board. If you're in acting, you have to rehearse your plays, you know, just everything. I've actually had roommates who are in acting and also in musical theater, and both of them have had to work so hard. You know, they were always practicing, always rehearsing, you know, coming home at like 1 a.m. because they're practicing in their studio. So it's not like dependent on the major, which I think some people try to say, that they think, you know, because they're a certain major, they're the only ones studying. That's not the case. I mean, I think it depends on the person for sure, but also if you want to take your major seriously, you can get stressed out in whatever major you're in. And it's not so much stress, it's like you're trying to do your best and things. So yeah, so you may not have enough time to do everything you want to. The university does provide tutoring on Saturdays and Sundays, actually, Sunday afternoons. So I was the type of person who I did have to go there on Saturdays and Sundays, to, you know, get tutoring, which I found kind of, you know, annoying in the process, because you think like on the weekends you're going to explore New York, and you will have plenty of time to do that. I think just realize, you know, that you do also have to study. And yeah, so just because this is already kind of long, to conclude, I think that if you want to go to New York City, that's your dream, or just go to a big city, just keep in mind that there are other schools in New York City. I think when I was applying, I was like, okay, there's NYU, but there are a bunch of other, you know, pretty good schools. There's Pace, there's Fordham University, Lincoln Center, What else? I mean, there's Columbia. But yeah, I think there are a lot of different other opportunities if you want to go to school in New York City. There's, Baruch College, which is like the honor college of CUNY, the City University of New York. So just keep that in mind. Another thing that I would say is that you can always transfer to NYU if you don't get accepted the first time, or if you just want to save money, because I know that's also something that NYU is very expensive, so I think don't feel like you can't attend. You can always transfer, and I've said a lot of good things about NYU, but personally I think if you really want to live in New York City, it's, in my opinion, funner if you don't go to school, because if you go to school, you'll be stressed all the time, and of course, in your professional life you'll also be stressed. But I think if you end up going as a job or as a young professional, that tends to be the New York you see more of, people just having more independence, and maybe less drama. So just don't worry about never being able to live in New York. I think you can for sure move after graduation, or just you'll be 21. What difference does it make if you're 18 or 21? It's still your early 20s. So don't stress out about not being able to go to NYU either. I know I watched a lot of these videos before I went to college, and I was like, what if I don't get in? It sounds so perfect. Like, don't worry, there are other ways to get there. But if you are going to attend NYU, I'm just going to finish off with some tips. So first of all, you're paying for 18 credits, so take all those 18 credits. Somehow my freshman year advisor didn't tell me about this before I went in freshman year, but a lot of classes are 4 credit classes, so if you're taking 4 credit classes, that's 16 credits, so just take those 2 other credits. If you're taking like chemistry, the lab will generally be that, but usually it's not the case. So your 2 credits can be like dance classes, which are great. They have a class on games, social business, something like that, which I didn't take. So there's a variety of classes in a variety of different departments you can take for 2 credits. The next advice I've had is to find discount tickets. This is great if you're in an organization. You can often receive these. The Skirball Center also has some, and NYU has its own theaters. Steinhardt has a performing arts thing. Tisch has a bunch of plays, and those are usually like $10 or $5 for students or something to that nature. So you can for sure see plays that are not on Broadway, just of NYU students, which are future Broadway, people, so you might as well see those. Another thing I would say with the discount tickets is you can join the residential college. I know now it's a bit up in the air about how all this is going to work, but they tend to also provide discount tickets to things, or like you just have to pay a copay, and just great workshops on, things like talks about various political and economic issues as well. So that's always great. If you're just interested in things, I don't know. There's also a great variety of academic opportunities like talks and things, which I think is really great to take advantage of as well. So my third tip is to go to other boroughs. You're in below 14th Street and basically above the financial district, so definitely explore outside of that area, So you can go to Queens, you can go to Brooklyn. There's so many opportunities for great food and just going to see other places in New York. It's the subway, just a subway ride away, so that's really interesting. New York has so much to offer, so don't stay in that little area around NYU. And my fourth tip, which again is kind of, in question right now, but would be to study abroad. Don't worry, if you're applying to NYU in, or planning to go in September 2020, you'll have 4 years. Hopefully all this will be resolved by then, but you can study abroad. I think that's one of the things that NYU does really well. I can speak to that because I studied abroad 3 times, and it's a great opportunity. And my last thing that I want to say is not to judge certain people. I know a lot of these videos, they tend to talk about their department or kind of stereotype people in other departments. And look, I think it's a very fun thing to do. You can be like, oh, look at those, people over there being arrogant, but just, I don't know. I think it's funny in a way, but also, it's not the reality, and, not everyone in Stern is super cutthroat. Not everyone I think this is worse in certain other stereotypes. We have a liberal studies department too, and people tend to be like, oh, they just want to have fun. Like, don't say things like that. I think everyone is different. Everyone is equally ambitious and equally, capable of the workload. Everyone works equally hard. So I think don't say that, you know, my major is so difficult. It's really not that helpful. So yeah, I hope that I've given you some advice. This has been a 20-minute video, but I hope I covered something. If you have any questions, please, you know, you don't have to leave them in the comments and make that public. Like, message me privately. Like I said, I can speak to various parts of the university because I know people and I can always ask them, you know. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Goodbye.